They fired Frank
I can't see
Reich.
it. Okay.
They fired Frank Reich. That happens live. I'm glad it happened now, in the middle of us recording this. As we're doing this, Frank Reich fired. This is from ESPN. From David. This is not even credited to David Newton. It's just a straight up news report. A source confirmed to ESPN the Panthers have an NFL worst 1-10 record. Yada yada yada. Panthers on Sunday scored 15 or fewer points for the 5th straight week, and for the 7th time in 11 games. So there you go. Frank Reich was fired while we're recording.
Are they going to turn this thing over to McNown and say,
hold on a second,
maybe he's the answer?
Hold on a second.
I mean, there's too many other guys there for it not to be.
Let's
do the whole thing over again if you'd like.
No. Actually, we're going to keep this in here because I think it's freaking hilarious that it's all happening in real time. It actually makes, you know what? I feel it in my plums again. I felt alive on Saturday because we were doing shit
we're
live.
Taking calls.
We're literally doing this live right now. Okay, the team has officially announced it. This is from Mike K, Charlotte Observer. At some point, how does Scott Fitterer still have a job, by the way? How do you not just throw everything out at this point and get ready for the next season? How does that happen?
He's probably relieved because you get money and now he doesn't have to torture himself on a weekly basis because he just has never seemed comfortable in these press conferences talking about.
No, he never does.
You know,
he's never. There was the optimism.
Again, Joe, just use the stat. 8 of 11 games, they've scored 17 points or less. You can't be the offensive coordinator and play caller and be that inept and still be employed. It doesn't matter what year it is.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing: as I'm getting composure as to the news. I wasn't, because I said at the beginning of this segment that I can't imagine Frank Reich getting fired in the middle of the season. They'll move on from Frank Reich. That's why I had my phone nearby for the most part, because I figured we were going to get some ESPN alert for something today. Something today. My speculation would be how these things typically work. Scott Fitterer has been around for 2 iterations of these coaching failures, and that he would be the first to go. That would be the first indication to go. And then they'll let Frank Reich play out the rest of the year, and then that'll be a wrap. I'm going to be really curious to see what David Tepper has to say about why now. What was it about this game that finally got you to go, fine, whatever? Is this a lesson learned from the Matt Rule era? Because remember, you and I sat there and spent a good chunk of time talking about you can't bring that dude back. We know where this is headed. And you decided to bring him back for that 3rd year. And then, of course, he gets fired in the middle of the season. If we all recognize that Frank Reich was going to be fired, at least do it at the end of the year.
Tepper is literally the anti-Pittsburgh Steelers at this point. The Steelers went from 1941 to 2023 without firing anybody in the middle of the season. Now, David Tepper, who is a former minority owner of the Steelers, has fired a head coach 2 years in a row in the middle of the season.
Yes. Scott Fitterer has also been making decisions. And that's why if you're David Tepper and you want to see if you can turn things around, you go to the people, you go to the fans and you say, we're going completely clean slate. I've learned my lesson. We're getting a coach and a general manager who are on the same page, and I'm going to let my football people take over. And unless he says that, unless David Tepper says that, you're going to get more apathy for the Carolina Panthers going forward. That building is going to be empty for the foreseeable future. Because I'm telling you, well, unless you have opposing team fans.
No, I'm just saying, the thing in the NFL is you can turn it around. Like the NFL really is a just add water league.
Yeah.
You got to get the right coach though. And you got to make the right personnel moves. So we'll see what they do. I'm not saying like give David Tepper some grace. Of course he deserves a lot of this blame, but this is a Frank Reich problem.
Yes.
You could sit here and say, oh, the pieces aren't there. I didn't get to pick the ingredients, all those other things.
Yeah.
The Carolina Panthers have played 11 football games this year. In 8 of them, they've scored 17 points or less. Unless you are playing in the Big Ten West, that's simply not good enough. Mm-hmm. This is the NFL. You have to score at least 3 times in a football game. 3 touchdowns, okay? It's embarrassing. They brought him back. They thought he was the right move after Matt Rule. I agreed with the concept in premise.
Yeah.
His play calling has not been good. The players have not rallied around him.
No.
The development of Bryce Young, like you said, he's in full Trevor Lawrence under Urban Meyer mode at this point. There's nothing to be learned from this year. You cannot get a good draft pick because of what you gave up for Young. So literally, I said it 2 weeks ago. I will say it again. The Panthers, David Tepper, for all of his money, needs to buy a fast forward button. Mm-hmm. They just need to fast forward to get through this, figure out maybe in free agency how to reshape their roster.
But here's the problem.
That's the only way they have.
Okay,
they don't have draft capital, so they have to do something in free agency.
I know what you're saying with hitting the fast forward button, but are we fast forwarding to a different owner? Too?
Yeah, but that's
because
but here's the thing you have to understand about David Tepper. Unless he does something problematic legally or otherwise, he's going to be the ones who own the team. They couldn't get rid of the idiot in Washington, and they had a million reasons. They couldn't get rid. The NBA couldn't get rid of a flat out racist for decades. So you have to give up this fantasy.
I get
that David Tepper's going anywhere.
He's not going to go anywhere.
And I get it. He's on this crazy granular level of like making sure they switch to a 3-4. That's what they do in Blitzburg.
That's what I'm getting at. But will David Tepper, these guys are theoretically very, very smart. That's how they made their money. They identified something that nobody else
They're smart
could.
at what they are smart at. That doesn't mean they're smart at football.
They're not smart at football, but are they smart enough to recognize all the other times in my life where I've been successful? I'll do the assessments. I'll change. I'll go and do what I need to do to be successful.
He's doing that. It's paralysis by analysis right now.
So is this offseason, will he do his own because you're right. He's not going to sell the team. There's no march on mint. There's none of that crap. So is he going to look himself in the mirror and go, do I want to be the next Dan Snyder? At some point, I am curious if David Tepper's looking at the failure that has occurred with all these coaching
I think he is
and he goes, you know what?
Joe.
Maybe
I need
it
every day.
Yeesh.
I think so. Like these guys are super over, and they literally drafted somebody who is a physical anomaly because he did well on a test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I am curious when it comes to Frank Reich.
He'll be fine.
No, he'll be fine.
This is not you or I getting thrown out on a Wednesday. This is the guy walking away with millions of dollars in his pocket.
He'll be fine.
I'm not worried about that. He'll go be an analyst for one of his friends in the league.
He'll be fine. I'm not worried about him. The question I was going to ask is what happened with Frank Reich this season more embarrassing than Matt Rule? Has he out embarrassed Matt Rule?
No, because I haven't heard the excuses from him, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, he talks himself in circles.
Yeah, because he doesn't know. Like, he's a guy who's conflicted. Like, this was all on paper. It made a whole bunch of sense.
Oh.
And now he's in it, and it doesn't.